We are living in a world where respect is not often earned, but is freely given to those who fit a certain mold. And compassion is often withheld from those who need it the most. Today, I want to talk about two men in my life who remind me just how backwards our society is when it comes to who we respect and what we demonize. And I believe that if we were to shift our perspective and change the way we decide who deserves power and who deserves compassion, we would see a more successful, flourishing, peaceful society. One of those people was my dad, who was an artist and a very kind soul, but he was also an addict who struggled with addiction for most of his life. The other was my grandfather, a respected man in his community, a sheriff's deputy, and someone people looked up to. And looking back as a kid, my memories of my grandfather are very warm and fuzzy and happy. But my memories of my dad are not so warm or fuzzy or happy. I carried a lot of pain about my dad because I thought that he did not love me. I thought that he chose drugs and alcohol over being my father, and that stuck with me for a really long time. But as I got older, I started to really question the way I view addiction and those who struggle with it. And at the same time, I began to see my grandfather more clearly too. And he also wasn't the man that I thought he was, but in a very different way. And the more I looked into both of their lives, the more frustrated I became with how society tends to uplift people who know how to perform respectability, even when they cause harm, and how we discard people who are struggling even when they are full of love and potential. So this video is about them, but it's also about us and the way we view the world, the way we decide who deserves respect and who deserves compassion, and how often we get that wrong. I'd like to start by talking about my dad, and that might be difficult for me to do, so bear with me. My dad was not in my life very much growing up. My parents divorced when I was 3, and I had visitations with my dad for a little while after that, but then slowly over time, he just became someone who was non-existent in my life. And by the time I think I was 8 years old, he signed away his parental rights. My stepfather adopted me, and that was kind of the end of it. They even changed my birth certificate to my stepfather's last name and kind of removed any trace or connection I had with my biological father. And I think that my mother did what she felt was best, and I think that my father felt it was best too, but I know that it really hurt him to sign away his parenthood. And I didn't really understand any of it because I was just a kid. And I just assumed that my dad didn't love me enough to stay, that he wanted to sign his rights away and he didn't want to be my parent anymore. I assumed that he was just choosing his lifestyle over me, and that if he really cared, he would have gotten clean. If he thought that I mattered enough, then he would have tried harder. And so for a really long time, I carried that with me. This belief that I wasn't enough for him to stay and that he was just selfish or weak or didn't care about me. And my mother didn't have the nicest things to say about him either. And I think she very much kind of cemented this idea in me too. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying it is what it is. So it was very easy to build up this version of him in my head that made him a villain. And I just kind of buried this deep, tried to move on. And he did reconnect with me when I got older, but by then I was just really hesitant and I didn't trust him. I didn't really want to open that door because I had worked really hard to close it. And so I just kind of brushed him off and I didn't give him that opportunity to know me as an adult. But what I know now is that he spent a lot of time watching me and rooting for me from a distance. He had a lot of pride for who I was becoming and what I was doing, and the fact that I had followed in his footsteps in a lot of ways, the good ones, by becoming an artist just like he was. And he knew that it was best for me that he just stayed away. But I think that he struggled with that because he also loved me a lot. But I had internalized so much of what society tells us about addicts, that they are failures, that they are dangerous, that they're not trying hard enough, that they are weak, that they're not worthy of our time or energy. And I believed that about my dad for a while, but I also had something inside that just told me there was a different version of him. that I didn't know. I remembered that he had a sense of humor, that he was an artist, that he had a kind voice. And I think deep down, I just wondered if maybe I didn't have the full picture. And so a few months ago, I got very curious about my dad. I digitized an old VHS that he had taken, a home video he took when I was 5 years old on one of my last visits with him. I started going through ancestry records, trying to find whatever I could about him and his past. I found old yearbook pictures of my dad and found out what school he went to. And so I made a post in a local Facebook group, or a couple local Facebook groups to that area. And, just kind of was asking people if they knew him, if they had any stories or information that they could share with me, good or bad. And I almost didn't post it because I was very nervous about what people might say about my dad. I just assumed, based on what I did know, what society told me about addicts, that he had a very bad reputation. And I knew that it was possible that there would be a lot of people that wouldn't have very nice things to say about him. But the responses were not what I expected at all. Comment after comment started rolling in from people who went to school with my dad and who knew him when he was younger. And every single one of them had something kind to say about him. People said he was funny, gentle, quiet but warm. They said he was insanely creative, that he was always drawing or painting. One person said that he was the reason that they fell in love with art and music, and that they attribute a lot of their love for art and music to my dad's influence in their life. Another person said that he never had a bad word to say about anyone, and that he was always so kind and he was always smiling. Several people posted pictures of a tree that my dad carved a face into years ago, and it still sits there. Though it's kind of grown and distorted over time, it's still there. He won an art contest when he was a freshman, a drawing of a Liberty Bell to celebrate America's 200th birthday. He made clocks and tables from cypress knots that he would paint and sell at flea markets. When I saw all these comments come in, I felt like I was meeting my dad for the first time, and I was learning a whole different side of him that I didn't know. And it made me think that if he had lived in a world that supported him, that prioritized his mental health, his social safety, that things might have been very different. He might have turned into a very different person, and I might have had a very different relationship with him. But instead, he was born into a world that doesn't care if you have pain, that if you struggle and you've had a hard life or you have mental health problems, that you are somehow responsible for all of that, even if you didn't create it yourself, and that you are responsible for pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, getting over your pain, and positively working and contributing to the society that you live in. I can use his story to talk about what could have been. I can use his story to showcase why it's so important that we don't just judge people based on the surface, based on just what we see, because there's so much that we don't know. And to society, my dad was just this loser, addict, who had nothing positive to contribute. But to so many other people that knew him, he was a kind heart with endless talent and creativity and potential that unfortunately wasn't seen by society, wasn't seen by the right people. Now, on the flip side of that, there is my grandfather, who is my step-grandfather. He married my maternal grandmother years before I was born. I called him Papa. He was a constant in my life. Growing up, I have very warm, happy memories of him. He took me to the zoo. He let me paint his nails. We would sit around and watch cops and court shows together. I felt very loved by him, and he made me feel very special. And for a long time, that's all I saw was this warm, kind grandfather. And it wasn't until I got older that I started to see the rest of the picture. My grandfather was a sheriff's deputy. He had a badge, a uniform, and a position of authority. He owned land. He had the respect of the community. From the outside, he looked like the definition of a good man. But behind closed doors, it was very different. My papa was very abusive to his wives and to his children. He was deeply racist, not just in subtle, offhanded ways, but openly so. There are stories that I won't share about my papa here because they're not mine to tell, but I will say this. He caused a lot of real harm and damage and pain to a lot of people that I love. And although the preacher at his funeral did not sugarcoat his shortcomings, he did celebrate the fact that my papa accepted Jesus and was a changed man at the end of his life before his death. And his funeral packed the church. He was given a respectful send-off with flowers and crying eyes, buried in the cemetery behind the church. Right before I made the very difficult decision to cut off several of my very toxic family members, one of them tried to guilt me by saying that my papa would have been deeply disappointed in the person that I'd become. And I wish that in that moment I had responded with how proud I was that I would disappoint such a person. Despite all of my papa's flaws, he was painted as someone that deserved respect. Meanwhile, my dad, who had unintentional flaws, who was just a person who struggled, but was kind and talented and loving, he was discarded and just kind of left to drown in his pain and treated like someone who hadn't earned any of our love or respect. The only way his death was honored was with a quick few lines in the obituary section of the local paper. He didn't have a funeral that I know of. Nobody paid their respects. I don't even think he got a grave. And that contrast really sticks with me. This contrast between these two men and how society treated them and how society would look at them today if they were side by side. My dad was an addict and an artist and a person that nobody made room for. And my grandfather was an officer and an abuser and the man people respected without question. And it is so clear to me that this society gets it so backwards because we don't value kindness and compassion for those who are struggling. We don't value creativity. We don't value people who are struggling even when their hearts are good. We value power, control, image, status, money, borders, and laws. We call those who cross borders to save their families illegals while installing a sexual predator as our president. We strip Medicaid from the disabled and tell them to get jobs so we can give tax breaks to billionaires. We criminalize farm workers and reward bounty hunters who terrorize and kill them. We don't want to give out healthcare and food to those in need. Instead, we demonize them, call them drains on society, and lock them in cages. We freely give our respect to people with badges simply because they have badges, even when they're causing harm. And we shame people who are hurting even when they're quietly carrying much love and potential inside. My dad didn't need judgment. He needed support from family and friends, from the society he lived in. And I'm not saying my father was not responsible for his poor choices because he made a lot of them and they caused me a lot of pain. But as the person who has had to carry the most amount of pain from my father, if I can see the person that he was past the addiction, then society should be able to do the same. And there are millions of people that are just like my dad. Not only addicts, but people who are born into poverty, people who are born into countries that threaten their lives and the livelihoods of their families, people born into abusive homes, people with mental health struggles, people who are good at their core but were never really given a chance because society doesn't like poor, marginalized people who struggle. Society doesn't give those people a chance. Meanwhile, we protect and celebrate people who have never done work to be better, people who hide their harm behind authority or respectability, people like my grandfather who used power to get away with cruelty. We give unearned respect, but rarely offer compassion to those who need it, and that's just what I keep coming back to. that if we prioritized mental health, if we were considerate of those in need, Americans and non-Americans alike, if we invested in family support, community care, recovery, art, healing, healthcare, education, food, if we stopped measuring someone's value by how they perform or what they produce and started seeing humanity first, I think that we would move forward with policies that would actually accomplish the things that we want, that would honor all of our values of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We might see fewer addicts, fewer abusers in power. We might see more artists, more joy, more connection, less trauma passed down through generations. Because what I've learned through my dad and my grandfather is that the people we lift up and the people we throw away don't always deserve the roles that they are given. And I think it's far past time we start questioning why that is. Humans are so nuanced and complex, and what destroys one person might build up another. And we often see that as a sort of strength rather than what it actually is, which is luck and privilege. Some people are more privileged. Some people just get lucky. Some people have brain chemistry that allows them to handle certain struggles easier than others. I know that when we share our stories encourage empathy. They shift perspectives. They get people to think and connect with you on a personal level. And I just think it's really important that we share these stories, that we talk about these things, because that's how people change their minds. That's how you change the future. I think what matters most is that we keep talking about this, that we name it, that we stop pretending like people in power always deserve to be there, and that people struggling somehow choose their pain or their struggle. And I can't rewrite the past. I can't go back and tell my dad that I see him now, that I know that he was more than his pain. But I can tell you his story and hope that his legacy lives on and that the person that he was doesn't get buried. And I can hope that maybe in some small way this helps shift something. If we want a better world, it starts with changing the way we value each other. It starts with empathy and compassion, not control and punishment. Ask yourself who you're honoring and who you might be forgetting, and who deserves your love and your compassion, and what matters most in life. Is it money? Is it power? Is it authority? Or is it kindness and creativity and potential and passion and love and joy? And I hope that I live to see a future where we don't just praise people because they've been given a certain status, a position of authority or power, and that we see those who are struggling as those who need compassion and help, that we recognize that if we want to live in a better world, we have to work to prevent the things that cause us not to live in a better world, that we have to uplift people rather than demonizing them. We have to support people rather than judging them, that people need help, resources, family, community, food, healthcare, education, kindness, empathy, and that those are the things that overcome all. And I know that regardless of what side of the political aisle you sit on, regardless of where you stand, if you boil out all the noise, I think we all recognize the need for love, the need for forgiveness and compassion and help. And that when you help someone, you're not enabling them. Like a lot of people in our society seem to think that somehow giving people the education that they need, giving people the health care that they need, giving people access to food and water, clean water, and homes, that is what creates a productive, contributing member of society.
and that we all deserve a chance. But some of us, some don't get as lucky and as privileged as others. And I consider myself incredibly lucky and privileged in a lot of ways. But I haven't had an easy life. And I think every day that I'm so lucky that I turned out to be a pretty functioning adult, that I've had a lot of success in my life, and things have gone pretty well for me, that I've created a really beautiful life. But just because I overcame my struggles and my pain and I figured it out anyway, it doesn't mean that I don't have privilege and luck that got me there. It doesn't mean that I didn't just get lucky with a brain that allows me to handle the things that I've been dealt and to overcome, because not everybody overcomes, and some people need a little more support and a little more help. And I just really wanted to share this today. It was hard to do, and I don't really like to get vulnerable and emotional here, but sometimes that's just needed. Sometimes people just need to be able to connect to us, to see our hearts, to hear our stories, and to better understand the world we're living in through the eyes of others that might have a different story or perspective than they do. And so I hope that I accomplished that today, that my story could encourage you to reconsider how you view others, how you decide who deserves respect and who deserves compassion, and that you'll move forward with more of an open heart to those who are not so lucky and privileged, to those who are struggling, to those who are marginalized, who can't seem to get a break, to those who sometimes have to break the law or cross a border for their family, for their safety, for those that are living here as Americans or not, who are struggling and who need help, and that those in our society who refuse to see that are not the people that deserve respect. Those are the people who have privilege and who don't use that privilege to help others, but use that privilege to hold power over others. And I don't believe that just because someone is in a position of power that they automatically deserve my respect. And in fact, most people I've known or seen that hold power and want power are not people that deserve it. And that those people who are the most demonized, the most judged, the most put down by our society are usually some of the brightest, kindest souls that just weren't given a chance. And that is the truth. How many people in our society haven't been given a chance? Because our society has created this bizarre idea of who does and doesn't deserve a chance based on what benefits those in power and those who are the most privileged. And don't let those in power tell you who you're supposed to hold space for and who you're supposed to prioritize, because those in power only want you to prioritize them, because that is how they stay in power. That is how they get what they want. And they are often the ones who least deserve our respect and our trust.
That's my little girl. Her sleepy pie. Look at that face. Oh, I tell you what.
Oh, somebody kicked me, I kicked them back. So it'd be an accident, huh?
Yeah. They're trying to get the ball.
I need big hugs. Hey, give me big hugs. What do you think you're doing, girl?
You love your Bubba? Get that worm back in your mouth. You love your Bubba? He's a good Bubba, ain't he? That's sweet. Christy had the ball. She got it. Good kick. All right.
Go!
Love
love you. Blow her a kiss. Now she wants a kiss. Oh, come on.
Bubba,
Mean it. Come
give her a bigger kiss than that.
on. Oh, this is... Mwah. Mwah.